Welcome to Chalk Talk, Danville Public Schools Weekly News Magazine. I'm Diane Locker, your host. We're at George Washington High School today, and I'm here with Billy Chaney. And Billy, you are the Director of School Safety
And security.
and Security.
Yes, ma'am.
What we're going to be talking about today is one element of that total plan that we have for the whole district. And I think this is one element that I say is high profile and extremely important. And that's going to be SROs, along with and backed up by our SSOs.
Yes, ma'am.
SROs are school resource officers. SSOs are school security officers.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me what the main difference would be between those two.
The SROs are uniformed certified law enforcement officers that are armed and identified as police. School security officers are unarmed. They train in being a security officer, but it's a different training, and they're identified as security, not law enforcement.
Let's go back to the SROs. Now, we have three SROs in the Danville Public Schools. We have one at GW.
Primary at GW, but he also, Corporal Goins, can also go to another school if needed, but he's primary at GW, yes, ma'am.
But when you say primary, what I mean is stationed at a school.
Yes.
Now, Bonner Middle School.
We have one that floats back and forth from Westwood and Bonner, kind of handles both middle schools.
And we have one elementary school, and that would be Woodrow.
Well, he spends a lot of time at Woodrow. That's where his station is, but he goes to the elementary schools as well, checks in.
So what you're saying is of the three SROs that we have, they're kind of like roving.
Yes.
All right. And I'm going to be talking with Corporal Goins shortly about those. Let's go back to the SSOs.
Okay.
SSOs, we have how many?
14
14.
total for the district.
How are they dispersed? And I think we talked a little bit earlier. They're dispersed by school population.
Yes. And the grant money that comes down the pipe, if you get any kind of grant money, it's usually for middle school and high schools. And the need was initially met for the middle schools and high schools, so that's where they are now. We do have one at Woodrow, the intermediate school that we just opened. But the majority are at GW because that's where 1,300 students are. The majority of the students are at GW, and it's a large campus.
Okay. One of the things I want to bring up before I bring Corporal Goins up is right back here.
Okay.
All of this background here. Now, we're at GW right now.
Yes, ma'am.
And basically, these screens give me a view of every single part of GW High School. Is that a correct statement?
I wouldn't say every single part, but I would say 90%, yes, of the hallway. Not the inside the classrooms, but the hallways and the campus, yes.
In the areas, open areas?
Yes.
All open areas?
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have this same type of thing at our elementary and middle schools?
Yes, we do.
Is this the screening that in all of our schools? I know you can't walk into one of our schools unless you press the button outside and they allow you in.
Yes, ma'am.
Does that come up on these screens that you and I are standing in front of now, or is that a separate thing?
The people that's trying to get in, you can see them on these screens as well as others.
Okay.
We have another system as well.
And all of our schools are basically locked down all of the time that school is open.
Yes, that's correct.
Same with our school buses now that we have video cameras, anyone trying to come onto a bus.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we are pretty much covered in Danville Public Schools with cameras.
Well, we have the last three schools, which is Park Avenue, Forest Hills, and Schoolfield, that are getting ready to get updated with the best technology because they're older systems, and we're getting ready to do those three. Yes, ma'am.
All right, now let me ask you something. You're the Director of Safety for the entire school district. How do you interact, let's say, with Corporal Goins that I'm going to be talking with? How do you interact with the SROs? What is their role to you?
Well, it's a great relationship between the SROs and Danville Public Schools as well as the school security officers. If I need Corporal Goins or any of the SROs for anything, I call Corporal Goins, he immediately answers, and we work together to solve problems.
Doesn't it also make us, as a school system, closer to our police department?
Yes, it does, and we're very close. We actually have a great relationship.
It's sort of like we're part of that police department because they're part of us.
That is exactly correct.
What I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring Corporal Goins up here now to talk to him because you told me he kind of oversees our SRO program here.
He is the supervisor, yes, ma'am.
Okay, let's kind of talk to him. Okay, Corporal Goins,
Yes, ma'am.
you are here at GW, and I said earlier to Billy Chaney that you are stationed here, and he said no, you move around. Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
Now tell me where you might. Let's say, or do you go to other schools, other high schools, other middle schools?
Yes, I go to other high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools. Usually what happens is if there is something that goes on, and let's say one of the SROs can't get there, they say, hey, we need you over here. I'll just go over to where that location might be, and it might be Schoolfield or Park Avenue or, Bonner or Westwood. Wherever I'm needed, that's where I go.
Flexibility.
Yes,
That's the key. Let's talk about you as an individual. I did some research on the internet before I did the show, looking at what school resource officers, what are they, what do they look like across the nation, and it's a pretty, I would say, solid description from the National Association that you belong to, that you are, let's say, a bona fide police officer
Right. Yes, ma'am.
that has taken special training
Yes.
to be a school resource officer, and it's a totally volunteer position. Is that correct?
Yes, you have to go through, well, first you're a police officer, and then I guess a little bit about myself. I was a patrolman, I worked investigations. I came over to the school system about going on 6 years ago. They wanted to make some different moves with it and kind of, I guess, bring it up to a better standard. So then they brought me in. We started getting better training. So from there, you go to an actual school. It's kind of like an SRO basic school. They don't call it that anymore, but that's what it is. And they teach you different things about juvenile law and different things you have to do as far as with talking and communicating with juveniles and just different rules and guidelines that we have. From there, I just came over and I've been doing it ever since.
Now, the SRO program, let's go back to the police department outside of the school system. You're actually part of community outreach, isn't it?
Yes, we came under, recently we've been put underneath the community outreach part, so it's all together. We're in the services division. So it's kind of like, and it all goes hand in hand. What happens in the school also happens, in the community. So it makes sense for it to be all underneath that umbrella because you're dealing with a lot of the same people.
But I think you have, as a school resource officer, a very unique position, and beyond everything that you do, underlying all of that is your relationships with students.
Yes.
And that's an important thing that we need to talk about. SROs are here, and you're obviously a policeman. You are armed, as all SROs are across the nation, armed. You are also an image. You're an image to each one of these students. And I think, isn't that an important part of what an SRO does?
Yes, it's a very big part of what we do is that we're here, they're able to see us, they can interact with us. And it's not an interaction that's, I think a lot of times in the community, you might come across a police officer, but it may not be a good interaction. Maybe your parent got a speeding ticket and you're in the car, or, something happened and the officer, encounters you. Well, us being in the schools, they're able to approach us and talk to us about things that they may not be able to do out in the community. Like if they saw a police officer just out, they're able to kind of build a friendship or, get to express themselves with you.
And I think that probably is one thing that we need for the community to understand. Yes, you're armed. Yes, you're a police officer, but you're not here as a security guard or something of that nature. You're here to work with students. Discipline. You're not here to discipline students because teachers and administrators do that.
Yes.
If they needed help, I'm sure you're there.
Yes, totally. That's something they handle all the discipline. We're here, like you said, in case they need help or in the offhand chance that, look, somebody has violated the law. We're here for a law enforcement, purpose. That is the main reason we're here. As far as being free, the friendships and encountering the interaction, that comes second. But, yeah, the school system handles all of the discipline. They take care of all of that.
Let's go back to something, and when I did a show with Billy about our whole district, and what is the thing that people out there think is the most dangerous thing, which would be, someone coming into a school with a gun, as we've seen happen across the country, which is really not a highly likely thing to happen. How are you trained for that type of thing. It's got to be part of your training.
Right. Everyone in the department has went through active shooter training. I'm also an instructor at our academy in Martinsville for active shooter training. So it kind of goes hand in hand with what I teach as opposed, well, not opposed, but with what I do now. So everybody's in the department has went through the active shooter training. The SROs have went through it, several times. We've also have a concerned effort now, and I think a lot of localities are looking at it. We're going to do more with the school resource officers as far as getting them that training, and then going over it and over it and over it. As practice makes perfect, so you don't have enough training. You just have to keep doing it. But everyone has been trained.
And I think public relations-wise, or what the community thinks, it's something that's before everyone, what's in their mind, but it's not really the thing that you're really here for. We're great that we've got the SROs in our schools for this, but what you're here for is relationships.
Yes, that's a big part of this. You go from two different facets with the way it was explained to me when I first started. You're there for police work, but a lot of what we do is just talking. It's education. We put on classes. We talk to kids. We engage them. It's a lot more than just, hey, strictly the violation of the law. We try to educate also, and build relationships.
There's a program that we've already got it out in the schools called Stop It. And this is basically a program where people are going to be able to report someone that's bullying them, anonymously. As an SRO in a high school, you also serve that human purpose. Do you have students that come to you and say, something's happening to me?
Yes.
Can you help me? So you're sort of like a walking, talking, stop it program.
Yeah, well, we try to, if somebody has a problem, if it's something that I can take care of, I, do everything I can to take care of it. But if it's something else, I can refer them to somebody else who's able to handle the problem for them, because sometimes it may not be just me, because we all work together. If it's something that I can go to Mr. Chaney about and say, hey, we need to sit down about this, I think we can come up with a solution, okay, we can do it. But it might be me, him, and a guidance counselor. We try and push the kid into, where we can help you and get the best help for you, which way it needs to go.
How often does a student come up to you or any of our other resource officers and talk with you about a problem? Is it a common thing or an uncommon thing?
It's a common thing. They do. After that, a lot of these children I've dealt with for, let's say 4 years, the whole time they're in high school. So from their 9th grade year to their 12th grade year, they'll come up and talk. And a lot of times your 9th graders will come. Middle schoolers, I know with the SROs there, they come and talk to them quite a bit.
Now, I have neglected to mention that we have 2 more SROs at this time.
Yes.
And I think that it's also important to realize that the school system doesn't pay for our SROs. This
No.
is totally a
Yes.
police-sponsored type
Yes,
thing.
it's what they're by police.
Now,
Yes.
we have one where at Bonner that works between Bonner
work
and Westwood.
Yes, it's going to be SRO Taylor. She works at Bonner and Westwood. Then I have SRO Walker, and he works all of the elementary schools. His home base of operations would be out of Woodrow, but he's in charge of going to all of the elementary schools.
What would be the difference between being an SRO here at GW and let's say Woodrow Wilson, which is an elementary school? What is their role? Wouldn't it be basically the same thing?
Yes, it'd be the same role. The kids would be older here than opposed to there, but it's the same role. You're there, you're talking, you're, doing police functions, you're letting the school handle the disciplinary part of it. But you're also there, and one of the main things is you're putting on classes, you're talking to kids. They do Virginia rules classes. That's something we do here and there at all the schools. We do stuff on citizenship, how to behave, laws, rules,
I was
stuff
going to
like
ask
that.
you, if you were to do, you've mentioned several times doing a class. Those are classes you do with students.
Yes.
And you would do a class here at GW on what?
You could do a class on citizenship, laws. You do all types of things, driving rules. It depends on what. It's a Virginia rules book, and it has a lot of different modules in it. So I know in the past we did a thing where we did something on drugs, but you have to kind of tailor it to what's there. Like they have one on prescription pills. It might be one on marijuana. So depending on what you're talking about, the book has different stuff in it. And we just kind of, customize it to what we're doing.
You customize it by making it current to what's going
Yes.
on in your own
Yes, ma'am.
community would be a way to put it. I would think that being an SRO in an elementary school is extremely important for a different reason than here at high school. Those are very young students,
Yes.
and to have that positive interaction where maybe in the community they didn't have a positive interaction, you mentioned that earlier, that SRO is a positive image for those very young students.
Yes, it is. A lot of them, that's the main place where they see, a police officer. So when they see you, if they see you and it's like, I guess, a positive but also a learning kind of experience, it puts a positive spin on it so that you've got somebody who's, hey, I like this officer, or, this guy at my school. And they say it a lot of times when you see them out, they'll be like, hey, it's a kid, the guy who comes to my school or whatever else, and they're with their parents. And a lot of times the parents will engage you in conversation because the kid had, so.
Where they might not have
Yeah,
without the student.
That's true. That's very true.
Now, you and I, right at this moment, are standing in front of what I call the epicenter of George Washington High School's SRO, SSO area.
Yes, well, this is going to be the main part in the building that you come into. This has got everything in it, the cameras, the computer, everything to monitor the school is right here.
Derek Bethel, you are a school security officer,
Yes.
SSO,
Yes,
unarmed.
correct.
You are the school resource officer, police officer, armed.
Yes.
What is the difference in your duties and Corporal Goins' duties?
He's a representation of the law. We're security officers for Danville Public Schools, and we are unarmed, and they're armed.
Now, we're standing right now, I referred to this earlier as epicenter. Now, what I mean by that is the main doors are over this way, and anyone that comes into to GW High School, and this would be basically the same at every school, has to push a button outside that announces them. Someone sees them on camera and says, come on in. They sign in here.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to go back to you for a second because I asked earlier, because I'm in and out of the school a lot. I come in, I sign in, I go about my way. Everybody smiles and we go on. What if you don't want some individual in this school, but they come through those front doors? How do we know who should be here and who should not be here other than, let's say, wearing badges?
Well, I guess the two main things, you do have traffic, let's say it's a FedEx man or somebody coming to get a transcript. A lot of times, when they come in, they go from here and go directly to the office or down that hallway because you have guidance down there and college advisors. They also, if you were coming in to check out a student, you wouldn't stop here. They would go in and go down to the PA office. And we have a system down
Now,
there.
what kind of office?
It's the pupil accounting office.
Okay.
And we have a system there when you're getting ready to check out your student, you have to put your ID there. It's called an Identikid system. And it's at all the schools. And you basically have your ID, you put your information in, and it will check you against different registries to see, if you're like a sex offender or something else that pops up, it will give an alert, and that way, they'll check you to make sure that you're able to pick up that student or if you're able to be on school grounds. But we have that in place in the pupil accounting office.
So a scenario where someone comes in to pick up a student, if in that particular office that you're talking about, if we can't identify that you have the right to pick up that student, you don't pick up that student.
No, you do not. No.
And that's where someone like yourself would come into play. If you're not here, then Derek would come into play.
Yes, well, Derek would be able to contact, if it wasn't an SRO there, he could get an officer over. Because, on the offhand chance, and I have seen it before where somebody tries to pick up a kid and they're not on that list, then you start asking questions like, why are you here? What is the purpose of you being here? If you don't know this kid, the child can come down and say, hey, I don't know you. Then you're dealing with something totally different than just somebody picking up a student, So that's what happens.
I think what's important in this conversation, though, is that we have many layers of security in our schools, obvious and unobvious,
Yes.
to protect the students.
Yes.
Now, Derek, talked to you a little bit earlier about what do you do in the school system. How many SSOs do we have here at GW?
We have a total of 7. That's inside and outside security.
Now, you told me that you operate within a zone, that, like, if you're here today because we're missing an individual that's usually here checking people in.
Yes.
So when you go to your zone, what do you do there?
Well, we all have a station, our own individual station at our zone, per se a desk or podium. But at that time, we have to make rounds within our zone. We all are assigned a designated area in the schools, designated areas throughout the school, and we have to patrol those areas, checking bathrooms and so forth and so on, and making sure that everything is the way it's supposed to be, that nobody's in the hallways that's not supposed to be in the hall without any type of authorization.
Now, I asked Corporal Goins earlier about relationships with students. You're in the same situation of being having a closer relationship with students. Do you have incidences where students come to you with, let's say, personal problems or school problems?
Yes, we do from time to time. We have, each one of us in our own way have certain students that are more comfortable speaking to us on an individual basis.
Now, the SROs are not involved in, let's say, day-to-day school discipline, because that's left up to teachers and administrators. Where do the SSOs fall in discipline issues?
Well, we don't discipline any of the students, but we can deal with referrals, and we can even write referrals ourselves if we have to for students that are not willing to comply.
Okay, so would you be writing referrals like he was talking there?
Not usually. We have the ability to, but we really don't write referrals. We'll just bring it up to maybe security guard, administrator, or teacher, But usually we don't write referrals. We have the ability to, but it's just something that we really just don't do. We leave that up to the school. That's that's something that they do, and they're more comfortable doing it.
I see the SROs as a wing of the police department, even though you're in our schools. Just in talking with Derek and you, I see the SSOs, the school security officers, as a wing of the school, of Danville Public Schools. Yes. There would be a difference there.
Right.
We spent a lot of time talking about what's going on inside the school, how people get into the school. Tell me a little bit about a normal day, and let's start with school starts. What happens there?
Well, at the beginning of school, of course, the lay bell is going to ring, and our job at that point is to assist in clearing the hallways. We have students that are stragglers that don't get to class on time.
Say it isn't true.
And it's our job to make sure that they get to hustle up and get to class.
Now, if you were here first thing in the morning, what would you be looking for? Are you outside where the buses come in? How does that work?
Usually we get to school, we come in, put our stuff up, and be in this area right here. A lot of times with the SROs, they go they'll walk down to the cafeteria, in their prospective schools, or they go in the hallway and kind of greet the kids as they come in. Because a lot of times you can catch kids coming in and tell if something's not right, or if they got a problem, they'll come up and talk to you then. We do like patrols, like you go through the school and check on things, you stop in classrooms,
Get everyone out of the halls, into classrooms.
Well, a lot of that is basically the school security guards and the administrators. A lot of times they'll push them in there. What we do is we'll go and check buildings. Like a big part of our job is, we walk the halls. We look around the campus. We see what's going on. We'll go to the lunchroom. We'll stop in the classroom and talk a little bit, just to get a kind of feel what's going on in the building.
Now, one other thing I need to mention, and this is for you and for Derek here. You walked off and left me. All right. This is 24/7 sometimes.
Yes.
We've got football games, we've got basketball games, we've got PTA meetings, we've got different things going on in schools. The two of you would also serve during those times, I would imagine.
Yes, for all the sporting events for the school, as far as with GW, and in other schools they have it, officers there, but I know with George Washington High School athletics, I assign people for that. We have people that work it for graduations, proms, we do all of that. We handle as far as the law enforcement part of it.
But that also gives you that opportunity to make a connection with the community, the school community at that time.
Yes, it does.
I want to thank both of you for spending some time with me today. You're very important, and you're very important to this school system, and you're also important to this community. And as a representative of Danville Public Schools, we appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure. I enjoy doing it.
That's the important thing. I want to thank all of you for being with us this week to learn something more about a very important aspect of what we're doing here in Danville Public Schools. You've heard from our Director of Safety, you've heard from Corporal Goins, and you've also heard from one of our school security guards. These are the things that we're doing to protect our students and promote academics here in the Danville Public Schools. I want to thank all of you for tuning in, and be sure to come back next week to find out what we're doing here in Danville Public Schools.